thanks everybody for your patience. We are starting a little bit early just to accommodate everybody here. Great outpouring of people, so thank you, honestly. We're here at the DOT. So my name's Derek Lassard. I'm the Division Chief of Bridges at Connecticut DOT. I just want to reiterate here today, we're going to go through a presentation. My team's here in front. We're here to answer questions as needed. For clarity, I think there's been some confusion. We're shifting gears a little bit. We are going to welcome questions and comments after the presentation in here, okay? There is a 9:30 stop just because of the building, right? But we'll go all the way until then, all right? So just rest assured, we're going to have someone running this wireless microphone. If you want to come up, you're welcome to. We'll go by raised hand. So I'll cover that again at the end of the presentation. But again, we're here for the replacement of Alpha Avenue over Amtrak. The main reason we're here is the bridge is rated in poor condition. If it wasn't in poor condition, I would not be here. So just understand that. That's why we're here. That's why we have a project. We want to mitigate these things. And again, we're here early in design. It's at our 30% mark, right? So construction would be anticipated right now per our schedule starting fall of 2027, with the bulk of it starting in 2028, right? The heavy lifting. So we have time. That's really what I'm trying to reiterate here. We're here to solicit public comment. We do this for all of our state projects. And this, honestly, I am happy a lot of people are here because we get to hear all of your questions and comments. I do encourage you still to fill out a form. We have forms out there just so that we properly document things. We're going to have the recording, so we're going to go through that and document it that way too. But I also encourage you to do written comments. What that gives us is a contact information that we can reach back out to you and at least tell you how we addressed your comment and go from there. So I want this to be an open thing. I'm going to hold questions and comments till after, if that's okay. I did at the beginning, but Derek Lassard, Division Chief of Bridges, Connecticut DOT, State. Yep, sorry about that. So yeah, without further ado,
I got some housekeeping stuff to do real quick.
Oh, here we
Let
go.
everybody know that there are 4 emergency exits, one on each side of the stage in the front, and there are 2 more located in the rear of the building. If we have a power issue, just hold tight, the generator will kick in about 15 seconds, and we should have some lights in there. And the fire marshal asked me to make sure that everyone stays seated the whole time unless you're actually off speaking. Okay? Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Stan Juber. I'm with CHA Consulting. We'll start off with a few housekeeping and notices, and then I'll go over an introduction to the project. Cover the existing conditions, the purposes and needs of the project, the proposed work, and then we'll have a question and answer session, and we may have an opportunity to, depending on how late it is, adjourn to the common room to look at the displays if anybody has some final questions. Civil rights notice, Title VI, English and Spanish. Post-meeting questions and comments can be submitted by email, by phone, or on the project webpage. There are also comment sheets available in the common room if you would like to have your comments included in the written record. And the comment period is open through August 14th. The project team, you met Derek Lassard already. He's the Division Chief of Bridges. Greg Plunk is the Principal Engineer. Francisco Fadul is the project manager. Isu Flashy is the project engineer, and Kathleen Erickson is a representative from the Rights of Way office. Project team for CHA is Don Wurst. I'm the CHA project manager. Francisco Garcia is the project engineer, and Naomi Cohen is the client project coordinator. The project team from Hardesty in Hanover, they are the actual designer of record. They do the bulk of the actual design work. We have Brian Kinsley, Steve Shankar, and Ryan Medina. The project location is over Amtrak at the entrance to the portion of the borough which is south of the Amtrak line. The Alpha Avenue Viaduct is an orphan bridge. That means its status is a little unusual. It's a bridge that supports a municipal road that spans a railroad not owned by the state. The municipality is responsible for maintenance of the riding surfaces, but Connecticut DOT is responsible for all load-carrying portions of the structure below the riding surface. So routine maintenance is on the town, but when it comes time for major repairs, Connecticut DOT does that. The cost share on the project in design right now is 80% federal funds and the balance from state funds. During construction, we will be seeking federal funds, but right now it's programmed 100% state funds except for a 1.2 million share from the town. The existing bridge was built in 1940. It's 625 feet long, has 8 spans. The roadway curb-to-curb width is 34 feet. Overall width is 48.5 feet. It was last rehabbed from about 1990 to 93, and it's in poor condition once again. The average daily traffic is about 6,000. The police department just did some recent counts and found it a little bit more than that. It's been rated in poor conditions since an inspection in January of 2020. That was a routine inspection that found that the piers supporting the bridge are in poor condition. That doesn't mean they're unsafe, it just means they need rehab work. There were a series of options looked at, which I'll cover in a little more detail, and found that full replacement was the most economical option over the long haul. I'll cover some bridge terms because I'm going to touch on those briefly. There's a diagram showing some of those major terms. The deck is what you ride on. The parapets are what keep you from driving off the road. The piers are what holds up the superstructure, and that's the part that supports the deck. And then the abutments are at the end. It's rated on a 0 to 9 scale, with 9 being excellent and 0 being completely failed. A 4 is poor, and poor again is still safe, but it needs work. The purpose of the project is to address all the deficiencies affecting the bridge, so it will continue to provide safe and functional passage to all the users above and below the bridge. We need to address the deficient substructure, increase the load rating factors, address the vertical clearance limitations, update the roadside safety systems to current standards, and keep travel over the bridge, including during construction. Ensure that the bridge itself is safe for now and the foreseeable future, and minimize the need for future maintenance. After this, we don't want to be back anytime soon. The existing conditions on the bridge deck, the overlay is in satisfactory condition. The deck is rated as 7, which is good, but that's based on a little bit of guesswork, because when you have an overlay over a bridge deck, it's hard to judge the actual condition of the deck. You can't really tell until you strip the overlay off. But there is some water seeping through the deck. That's the efflorescence you see in the bottom photo. That means water is seeping through the bridge deck, and water going through the bridge deck can corrode the rebar which holds the deck together. The superstructure is in fair condition. That's one step above poor. There is damage to the girders caused by arcing from the Amtrak catenary. There's isolated corrosion damage. There's enough section loss to drop the rating to fair. And in about 10 years, the bridge is likely to become poor. So we want to address the bridge now before it becomes in poor condition. The substructure is really what's driving the project. There's a lot of corrosion on the piers, and those are original 1940. The superstructure and deck, I believe, were replaced in the 1990 rehab. But right now, the original components, the piers, are what's failing at this point. Normally, a project has about 4 alternates that are examined as part of a rehabilitation study. This project had way more alternates than normal. There's a lot of information on that screen. There is also a display in the common room should you want to get a better look at it. It's a little difficult to compare a lot of these options because we spent about 4 years from the start when the bridge was identified as poor condition till now. So I had to adjust some of these numbers for inflation because a lot of the early options we looked at dropped and we added new options later on, so I had to kind of equalize their costs and dollars as of February 2025. We had an initial rehabilitation study report, and that one, it looked like alternate 4 was going to be the best option. Unfortunately, alternate 4 would require the closure of Main Street and Cutler Street where they cross under the bridge. The reason why it's so much cheaper than the other options in the long haul is because it would be a much shorter bridge. It'd be only 200 feet long. But when we met with the town, they said the impacts of closing the roads would be unacceptable to the town. So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with alternate 5, which still assumed that we were going to use alternating one-way traffic to handle traffic during construction. But when we met with the town, local officials expressed some concern with traffic backup, so we went and did a traffic study and found that the traffic backups would be a nightmare. So we went forward with options looking at maintaining two-way traffic during construction. Those are alternates 5A, 5B, and 5C. 5B would have a very severe impact because it would involve constructing a new bridge alongside the existing bridge, leaving the existing bridge in place to carry traffic while we built the new bridge. The right-of-way would shift way over. C would have a similar impact only temporarily because it would be a temporary bridge alongside the existing bridge to carry traffic while we built a new bridge in the exact same location as the current bridge. And then we also looked at a few other alternatives, which we call 6 and 7, different combinations of spans with fill sections. But because of the fill sections would have a much wider footprint, those would also have a bigger rights-of-way impact, so those were dropped from further consideration. All alternatives would have property impacts under and near the bridge, and they're likely to last about 2 construction seasons. When we say a construction season, that's because typically projects in Connecticut shut down during the winter because of certain operations you can't do when the temperature's below freezing. So we assume that the construction year only lasts from April through the end of November. All the rehabilitation alternatives would only postpone the replacement. We'd be back here in 15 to 20 years for another rehab project. They would require alternating one-way traffic because you're not building a new bridge, so you have nowhere to put the traffic while you're doing work on the deck. They wouldn't correct the underclearance issues. They wouldn't correct the substandard clear zones at Main Street and Cutler Street. It's where you like to keep objects out of the way of drivers in case they veer off the road. And in the long haul, they would cost more for maintenance and construction. All the replacement options, what they have in common is they provide full legal clearances over local roads at Amtrak, wouldn't require replacement for more than 75 years, wouldn't require a major rehab project for at least 50 years, and would provide long-term cost savings to both the town and the state over those years. Railroad clearance requirements. There seems to be a little misunderstanding about this. The clearance requirements that we designed this project for are governed by the Connecticut General Statutes. They say if you're doing a minor rehabilitation where you're leaving the existing deck in place, you can just stay with the existing clearance. If you're doing major rehabilitation or replacement over an electrified rail line, the clearance that state law requires is 22 feet 6 inches, and the only way you can get an exception to that is special legislation. Amtrak standards require 24 feet 3 inches. We are not going to meet that requirement, so we're going to Amtrak and ask for a design exception. This is what the proposed work looks like in a plan view. The bridge is in red, the green is embankment. there will be retaining walls on both approaches to handle the increase in height because the new bridge will be a little bit higher. So to reduce the rights-of-way impact, so we don't have to build the slope out more, we'll have retaining walls to support the increase in height. I can now introduce Hardesty and Hanover to talk about the actual design. Brian?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, I'm going to bend over then, I apologize. I guess I'm holding it. Thank you, Stan. So, as Stan just said, this is a plan view of our project site, which extends from the intersection at Trumbull all the way to the intersection of Water Street. The pink in the image shows the proposed bridge structure, which, under our current plan, is located 12 feet 3 inches to the west of the existing structure. The yellow work indicates all of our approach work, including the roadway up to the bridge abutments, and additional work to incorporate improvements at both intersections. The green work, like Stan said, is additional land disturbances, in most cases just regrading around our structure. The overall footprint of the final structure will be very similar to the existing structure. And as you can see at the Water Street intersection, the turning radii have been increased, and there's a small island included there to ease pedestrian crossing. This is a cross-section view of the approach roadway, or the roadway that leads up to the bridge structure. It should look familiar. The width of the sidewalks, the width of the shoulders, and the width of the road have not changed, and should not change based on our current plan. The pink in this image is showing retaining walls that we expect to use to support the roadway, and then there will be some regrading on both sides of the structure. This image shows the proposed bridge and roadway profile, which shows clearances at Cutler Street and Main Streets and at the Amtrak Railway. It also shows the slopes and vertical curvature of the approach roadway and bridge, addressing some of the needs that Stan had already mentioned. The proposed structure will provide minimum vertical clearances of at least 14'6" at Cutler and Main Streets, which is a sizable increase over the existing. And it'll also provide additional clearance over Amtrak to meet the state statute. In the diagram, there's a thin dotted line that represents the top of the existing roadway. And we can see that the proposed profile is slightly steeper at the approaches. We were asked about the increase in grade. It's about an increase of a foot every 100 feet. So just a little bit steeper than the existing. And keep in mind that this image, the scale in the vertical direction is 10 times the scale of the horizontal direction. So everything is exaggerated. The vertical scale is exaggerated 10 times. Now we're looking at two bridge sections. On the top, we show the existing structure. It's 48.5 feet wide. There are currently 9 girders supporting the roadway and sidewalks. We've got the 6-foot shoulders, 6-foot sidewalks, 5-foot shoulders, 12-foot lanes, and with an asphalt overlay, concrete parapets, and a chain link fence. The proposed bridge maintains the same width and cross section. It'll have similar parapets, currently using a 6-girder superstructure. And as I stated, the footprint of the existing bridge is going to be roughly the same as the proposed. It's just shifted 12 feet to the west. And that's mostly to accommodate the needs of maintaining a lane of traffic in each direction through the duration of construction.
12 feet or 12 days?
12 feet.
Thank you, Brian. For bicycle and pedestrian facilities, the design meets or exceeds all Connecticut DOT complete streets requirements. For sidewalks, it would require 5 feet minimum sidewalk with marked crosswalks. We are proposing to have 6-foot sidewalks on both sides, which is the same as existing, with marked crosswalks and illumination where the crosswalks are. There are no transit facilities within the project limits, but the bridge piers will be located to provide room for a potential Shoreline East train station. There was a feasibility study a while back. To select the bicycle and facilities, we had some questions about how the bicycle facilities were chosen. We consider both the traffic volume and the posted speed limit. Alpha Avenue is anticipated to carry 6,400 vehicles per day in a design year, which is 2047. The posted speed limit is 20 to 25 miles per hour. For that combination of volume and speed, because there are no bike lanes in the area, a paved shoulder meets the guidelines. For bicycle and pedestrian access during construction, the stage construction that we're considering would require closing the sidewalks to use the sidewalks as travel lanes so we can shift the traffic over. So two options are under consideration to handle pedestrians while those sidewalks are closed. One is a detour to Elm Street, which would require the addition of ADA compliant ramps to the Elm Street pedestrian bridge, and also filling in a short section of sidewalk along Cutler that's currently missing. The other option is a temporary bridge which would span from North Main Street to Matthew Street over Amtrak. That would require construction of more than 500 feet of sidewalk. Because there's an accessible route now, meaning a hard surface route, we need to provide a hard surface route that is equivalent to what's there now. Construction staging. The north side is sometimes also referred to as the west side because we call the project as running north to south, but it's really at an angle. Initially, we would start construction by shifting traffic over to the east side of the bridge, demolishing the west third of the bridge, building a new bridge alongside there. Then we shift traffic over to the new section, demolish the remaining portion of the bridge, and put traffic back on that structure. There are several considerations, as I mentioned earlier. The initial designs were based on alternating one-way traffic during construction. We also looked into reopening the Water Street grade crossing, but that was it was requested and denied. Amtrak. Local emergency officials expressed concern with the traffic backups that we would have during alternating one-way, which led to taking traffic counts in July of 2023 and then some modeling based on those counts. Alternating one-way traffic would simplify the project. We wouldn't need temporary pedestrian accommodations, and it would reduce some rights-of-way impacts because the final bridge would end up pretty close to where it is now instead of shifted over 12 feet, but it would have very severe traffic impacts. With all alternating one-way traffic, all movements at both intersections, that's Trumbull Street and Water Street, would have level of service F. Now, level of service is like grades on your report card. They go from A through F, and F is failed. That's all turning movements, going straight, turning right, whatever. Level of service F. Delays up to 5 minutes, traffic backups up to 1,600 feet. And the person who modeled this warned us that when the backups get like this, the model gets a little hard to predict because then they start backing up traffic at adjacent intersections and everything ends up in gridlock. There's also a lack of visibility between the stop zones because of the crest of the bridge. Traffic would be waiting at Trumbull. They can't see Water Street from there. So you'd be starting up over the crest of that bridge blind. Sometimes people get impatient because they have a very long wait. They figure nobody's coming. They go up over the bridge and they meet a car coming head on. It would take 35-second all red to allow traffic to clear the bridge once they start, which contributes in part to very long cycle times. And if we did start with alternating one-way traffic, once we remove half the bridge, there's no turning back. You're committed to that for the duration of the project. So if your first summer is really ugly because of traffic, because of gridlock, your second summer is also going to be really ugly. which is why we went back and started looking at options that were based on having two-way traffic during construction. So alternates after 5, beginning that's 5A, 5B, 5C, 6, and 7, were based on the assumption that we have two-way traffic. Up to then, we had been assuming alternating one-way traffic. Right-of-way needs. The property for the original bridge project was purchased by the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. This bridge was actually built as part of a grade crossing elimination program. Apparently it was a joint venture it was federally funded, but it's between Connecticut DOT administered the project, but the railroad actually bought all the rights away. And after the project was over, they retained it. Once the original construction project was complete, when the bridge was built in 1940, the bridge was turned back over to the railroad to maintain. Subsequently, the railroad went bankrupt, which is how it became an orphan. Access is needed for construction and future maintenance under and around the bridge, and there's a need to eliminate flammable material under and near the bridge in accordance with FHWA policy, which you have to follow if you're using federal dollars on a project. And the FHWA policy assumes that buildings or anything flammable under the bridge is incompatible with highway use and should be removed from the rights of way. Right, now I'll introduce Kathleen Erickson to talk about rights of way.
Thank you, Stan. So again, my name is Kathleen Erickson, and I'm a project coordinator with the Department's Division of Rights of Way. Our office is responsible for acquiring property rights that are needed for transportation projects all throughout the state. So I'll be giving you a brief overview of what the acquisition process looks like. Before I get further into that, though, I just want to start off by going over the definitions of some common right-of-way terms. So first we have easements, and these allow the department to use property for a specified purpose, but the property owner will still own the land. A common example of this is a slope easement, where the department would use property to build a slope to support the roadway. Next, we have temporary construction easements, which allow the department to use property temporarily for construction activities, but then these are released upon the completion of the project. And finally, here we have permanent acquisitions, which is when the department will purchase property, either in part or in total, and own it outright. When you're looking at construction plans or property maps, these areas are typically labeled as taking areas. I do want to mention again too that the property impacts for this project are still being finalized, so they could change as the design progresses. Also, any property rights that are acquired are done so in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, sections 13A-73 and 13A-98E, as well as the Uniform Act. So the right-of-way acquisition process begins once the project reaches a development milestone and all of the property impacts have been determined. At that point, each affected property owner will receive from our office a formal letter of intent to acquire, as well as a property map depicting the exact property rights to be acquired. You can see on the screen here just a sample of what a property map looks like. Next, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights and use that to create an offer of just compensation. The property owner will receive the offer in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with them to discuss the project, their specific property impacts, and the offer itself. The property owner will be given a reasonable amount of time to consider the state's offer and to enter into negotiations. And then once an agreement has been reached, the department will prepare all the necessary documents to record the property map and the deed on the town land records. Now, if an agreement cannot be reached, in order to maintain the project schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. If that were to happen, the state would file a notice of condemnation with the Superior Court, along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The property owner would then have 6 months to file an appeal if they felt that the state's offer was inadequate. Now, whether or not the owner chooses to appeal, the money that's deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn at any time by the owner. Now, as you'll see with this project, the design may require the relocation of businesses or nonprofits, so I just want to quickly touch on the relocation benefits that are available. Each displacee is entitled to advisory services, as well as reimbursement for moving and related expenses. Also, businesses and nonprofits are eligible for reimbursement for some reestablishment expenses as well. A relocation specialist will also be available to meet with displacees during the acquisition process and discuss these benefits in more detail and how they pertain to their particular situation. And I do again just want to reiterate that the property impacts for this project are still preliminary, and the department will continue to coordinate with with property owners and look at different options at potentially decreasing impacts as the design progresses. But if anyone has any questions regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, I'm happy to answer them during the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. I'm going to turn it back over to Stan to get into the actual impacts.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go over the rights-of-way impacts throughout the project. This is the north end of the project near Trumbull Street. Mostly it's just regrading in that area. And then just north of Amtrak, the area shown in red is proposed permanent acquisition, and the green is a proposed temporary easement. The temporary easement is for construction access, but also for safety. Because we anticipate having cranes out there, we'll have to demolish the bridge, so you're going to have chunks of concrete falling, lifting out the old steel girders, moving in new steel girders. There's always a chance that something would be dropped, and we don't want people underneath that in structures or otherwise. So we have a temporary easement, so we have access to that area. South of Amtrak, that's property owned by Dotson's Boatyard. The area in red, which is right underneath the bridge, would be retained by the state to limit storage of material underneath the bridge. The area in green, there's a large portion shown that's on the east side of the bridge, and the reason for a temporary easement there is because the access to that parcel is currently through underneath the bridge, and it will be inaccessible while the project is going on. So we will lease it from the current owner for the duration of the project, and then they'll get it back once the project is over. And DOT can give them a right-of-way underneath the bridge so that they can access that area. Utility and drainage impacts, relocate overhead power lines. There's some telecommunications cables attached to the bridge now that we will move underground. We typically do that on all of our projects to make maintenance easier. Drainage impacts, the catch basins will need to be relocated. We'll do a drainage analysis to make sure the existing pipes are all up to current standards. Natural resources, it's located in a FEMA special flood hazard area. It's listed as part of the Stonington Borough Historic District, but the bridge itself is not historic and it's not a contributing element. There are minor temporary impacts to wetlands related to staging expected, but for the most part, we're trying to stay out of the wetlands. The wetlands have already been flagged. It is located within the coastal area, not in an aquifer protection area. Anticipated permits are all from Connecticut Deep, or mostly from Connecticut Deep. Inland wetlands, stormwater, Army Corps of Engineer self-verification, and possibly a coastal area management if we don't need a deep inland wetlands general permit. The anticipated project schedule, we are in the preliminary design phase right now. The design approval, which is when DOT would approve the preliminary design, would be in December of this year. The design completion, when the final design is done, would be in May 27. So once the 30% design approval, that's when DOT decides, yes, this is the project we want to go with, go ahead and work out all the details. So that would take until May 27, it would be advertised for construction in June of 27, start in construction November of 27, and construction duration would be 2 to 3 seasons. If they start in November, you might not see a lot of work until the following spring. The current cost estimate is $48 million, and currently for construction, it's programmed for state funds, but it's likely that it will convert to federal funds during construction, but no guarantees for that. And there is a 1.2 million share from the town. And that's because under the statutes governing the Orphan Bridge Program, the town is supposed to pay 15% of the project costs. Now, because there would be a long-term savings to the state offered to find other funding to fund the difference in cost between a rehabilitation project and the complete replacement. So they held the town share at 1.2 million. The design is in a preliminary stage, so all of this is subject to change. The plans, the cost estimate, the schedule, all is subject to change. You can reach out after the meeting by email, by phone, or on the project webpage. You can also join us for informal discussion, but now we're going to open the floor for comments from the public.
All right, so we are gonna have the borough warden, there's legislators too.
One quick comment, there's a car in the parking lot with this lights on, a VW Beetle 1AL VG9, just a reminder. Go up there, keep your lights on.
All right, so borough warden.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Michael Sheffers, the Stonington Borough Warden, and I'm here tonight to share remarks on my behalf as well as those of First Selectman Danielle Cheeseborough. Danielle regrets that she could not be here this evening. We understand how deeply personal is this project. When potential impacts to private property involved, it's natural and right for people to ask hard questions and expect clear answers. As your local leaders, we are committed to working hard to ensure community needs are reflected through this process. We are optimistic that by all of us working together, we can have a project that results in a positive outcome for our community, both now and for future generations. We also recognize that plans can evolve quickly. When they do, it becomes even more important that everyone has access to clear, up-to-date information. That's why tonight matters to us all. This is a moment for constructive two-way dialogue. DOT came here tonight to present their most current plan, and we appreciate their willingness to come in person to engage. Having said that, however, I find it necessary to share my personal constructive criticism of DOT concerning the history of this project, which is now more than 2 years on. First, I am extremely disappointed with DOT, their communications to Danielle and I of late. I am disturbed by the lack of transparency for this project. I am currently disillusioned with the process and its results to date. Given our original agreements with DOT and our public safety stakeholders, both the town police and our borough fire department. Given that lack of communication with Danielle and myself, I feel totally disconnected with DOT as an elected municipal officer. I feel distressed for the individuals, businesses, and organizations that are currently affected by this, or I should say potentially affected affected by this current redesign. Given that, though, my heartfelt hope is that DOT will do the best for the people of our town and our borough after hearing public comments. Again, this is distressing for our town and our borough, and we appreciate DOT's willingness to attend this meeting in person. We thank everyone for being here and trying to work this out as we go forward. And as a reminder, tonight is just one milestone. DOT will accept feedback for 2 weeks following this meeting. Please help spread the word to your friends, family, and neighbors, knowing all of our voices matter. Again, we thank you all.
So I think the fire chief was next.
Well, tonight, I'm going to give you a little history lesson on what's been going on here probably for the last 32 years instead of several years. Back in 1991, I was the fire chief at that time as well. And this project was finished back in '93. It went fairly well. It was one-lane traffic, back and forth, alternating traffic, like they said. And things worked pretty good. I'm sure there's not as much traffic back then as there is today. But at the very end of this project, when we thought everything had gone so well, our emergency crossing at North Water Street disappeared on us in the middle of the night. And nobody informed us that this was going to happen. As you well know, that the viaduct is the only way in and out at this point in time for all residents. And we're very concerned about that. We weren't in the present firehouse where we are now. We were down on Church Street at the time. And that was just closed up, like I said, in the middle of the night on us without even being told. Fast forward many years and many letters and many concerns about reopening that crossing. And Amtrak has always refused to do that. And I've always been extremely puzzled about the whole issue. They said they didn't want any more at-grade crossings. Well, right on both sides of us, there are 3. There's 6 in the town of Stonington alone, saying they wanted to eliminate them all. There are 6 in the town of Stonington. And 3, Wampausick Point, Walker's Dock, Elihu Island, are within a mile or 2 of the North Water Street crossing as well. So they are also on one of the most dangerous and sharp curves on the railroad on the East Coast. I mean, you can look that up anywhere. And when I was a kid, there was a derailment there. A train came around that corner, and the old Stonington Lumber Building was where the condos are at 103 Main Street, excuse me. And a train derailed there, right into the footbridge and right down towards the viaduct. It's a very sharp corner. So, fast forward, let's go back 8 years now. To me, this is just a personal opinion, but that hideous black fence that's along both sides of those tracks, we met with then first selectman at the time, Rob Simmons, myself, my old boss, Jeff Callahan, and the borough and we hit them hard on, let's open this thing up again, this would be the time to do that. They said, absolutely not. We're gonna put a gate there though. Well, if you take a walk down there, the gate is a ways down the Wattawanna Club driveway. And there's one on the north side of the tracks as well. And they're good for walking through. You could never drive a vehicle through those gates. Then go back a couple of years ago, when this project started, we wrote letters, Michael, Danielle, myself, we wrote letters to Amtrak again, and we called them down to Town Hall for a meeting. We sat there and literally begged them to open up that crossing, knowing that this project was coming along. Issues could happen. Something could happen on that bridge during construction. It could happen anytime. It could happen at night, and we wouldn't have any access north of the tracks. They said that discussion is not even on the table. So, in my own opinion, I think this thing should go a little further, maybe to our congressmen, our U.S. senators. Maybe they should have a say in this. You know, we have a charge, and that's to protect lives and property. And I've been the fire chief there for 34 years, and we've been doing that for over 50 that I've been there. So we take that very seriously. And if something happened to that bridge, we need access out of there. And everybody here that lives south of Amtrak aren't going to put up with being stuck down there for a week, let me tell you. It's not the way it's going to work. So this needs to get done. I don't have a whole lot of confidence that it will, but I will say this about this project. We will have a plan in place. There are many options available for us as a department. We can put a fire truck north of the bridge. We can put it in town highway. Starting an ambulance, there's 2 ambulances right by town public works. We can put an ambulance in our firehouse. The reason we built the firehouse 20 years ago, where it is, most people wanted it north of Amtrak. And I insisted that we build it south of Amtrak for this reason, is because we at least had a department south of Amtrak to protect from there all the way to Stonington Point. Anything north of that, at the time, trucks could be brought in from our mutual aid companies, which we work together with all the time. Pawcatuck, Wiggity, Quambog, Mystic departments, they would come in and help us out north of the tracks down there if we couldn't get out. So the biggest thing is, for this project, I think that one-way alternating traffic would not be a problem for us, especially if we could get this, the North Water Street gate opened again. But we would still, during this whole project, have vehicles on both sides, and we would approve how that's going to work. Because nobody's more critical of us than us. We're very dedicated, and we have everybody in these departments in this town are extremely helpful. We work together. And I think if this is going to help avoid this bridge from being moved and people's properties who've spent a lifetime on those properties, some of them, from being taken away from them, then this is the route we have to go and build this thing in the same footprint, if possible, that it was done the last time. So that's really my question to Connecticut DOT is, if we come up with this plan and we assure everybody's safety on both sides of the track, then can this be done without taking these properties away from these people? And I hope that answer is yes, and I hope Amtrak's answer is yes. So let's see going forward what happens. Thank you very much for that.
Service F, right, if we maintain alternate one way. With that said, if you have a plan in place to accommodate emergency services during alternating one-way. And in addition, the town and the borough and the constituents are on board with the level of service F, right? As a state, we don't allow that, right? That's not our normal thing. So that would have to be a discussion with the town and the borough. It would significantly reduce property impacts, we all know that. However, we still have to do construction, right? So there'd be temporary easements in people's properties, right, to get access. The Como building would still have to be investigated, right? It's currently under the structure. So there are a lot of factors that would have to go into that we would review. So on the table, that's why we're here taking public comments. So I don't know if there's any, I will go to public comment in a second. Are there any state reps or elected officials, other people that would like to speak? No, I don't see any hands. Former first selectman. You want to come up here?
I have some history. I'm Don Marnell. I used to be first selectman a long time ago. So many people remember when dinosaurs roamed the earth. That was me. I find it interesting that, we talk about this, raising it because we have to, which happens because of how much work you do. If you replace, then you're required by state statute to replace it. But that same law, or Section 13B 251 exempts the pedestrian bridge in New Haven, which is 17 feet, a little bit lower than what we are. Places in Milford, Hartford, North Haven. So it doesn't seem like this 22 feet is carved in stone or in pillars. I don't see a reason to do that. I don't think any of the elected officials ever wanted to have just two-way. That was the only, right? Because we have done alternating before, and I understand it comes with a pain, and it's going to be devastating to businesses there, I think. But there's a point where it's also devastating if at some point the viaduct collapses. So sooner or later we've got to do something. That just means we have to redouble our efforts supporting our businesses. What you're not hearing when you're redoing the sites where they're going to regrade, and then, if I remember right, you talked about putting some walls in, retaining walls to help support that. That means, it sounds small, but it's big to us in the borough. Anybody that grew up in a borough, you spent your winters sliding down those hills.
Yes.
Right? That goes away. You don't have a whole lot of places for kids to play. Let's just take that away because we want a couple more feet to go over. Amtrak never said a word to me between 96 and 2001 about the height of that bridge. Right? They wanted to put sheet metal on both sides of that. I made them put that Lexan on there so that we could at least have some view. It's probably about time to replace that anyway, so that's not necessarily a bad idea. But I don't think local officials were ever supporting going into moving the bridge right away, takings and all this kind of stuff. You just had people buy the old restaurant, and now you're talking about taking it all from them. They will not get what they paid for, right? I don't, so this whole project turning into a replacement, and let's just do round numbers. By the time you start, you're going to think it's about 20. It'll be more than that, because the project will do a little bit of miniature big dig, in my opinion. But the $60 million version would probably be 80 by the time you do time value. Let's do our own Doge. I'm not a Doge person, but let's just not spend the money. Let's spend it somewhere where it's needed. There's nothing wrong with that bridge from the standpoint of its size, its location. It needs some work underneath it. Right? And I've seen inspections, but I don't think I've ever seen a whole lot of work since 1993. I don't know if the chief has either. Right? I'm around there all the time. Sandy, you live over there. That stuff just isn't done. Right? So, I had more fire and brimstone out there in the informational thing here. And I don't want to swear, I got too many sailor aspects of this. But I remember a song from the late 60s, early 70s, and it was kind of a tongue twister a little bit. Is that in that song it said, that's not what the government meant, and this is not what we meant. Fix our bridge, don't replace it, don't mess with our neighbors. We can do alternate traffic, We've done it on bridges as you've gone through town. We've done it on that viaduct. Yes, we've had impacts with businesses. We'll figure out a way to support those people. So please, get away from this one here, spend the 20 million instead of 60 million. Let's save some money. Go spend that somewhere else. Go raise the pedestrian bridge in New Haven. Thank you.
All right, so, hold on, sir, hold on. Are you the first elected official? Yeah, all right, cool. Can I address his question and some comments there? You can come up, but, so the vertical clearance, right, we touched about state statute. We're required to follow that, right? The DOT were required. There is it's a legislative action. Okay, it's a legislative action to change that, right? So just work through your legislative officials if you want to make this bridge exempt. So we'll work through that. In addition, so I think Borough Warden mentioned the design change, and I think we talked about the impacts. I just want to provide some clarity with that, right? So we've been in coordination with Borough Warden since 22, I believe. We've been in a lot of talks. For clarity, the borough and the town wanted us to rehab the project, specifically because of the cost, right, associated. The town would have to participate in 15%. So we look at the life cycle, we look at the condition of the structure. We're thinking long-term, right? Think 25, 50, 75 years. What will it cost to replace the structure then? And what will the impacts be then? So as a department, we decided to move forward with the option of replacing. At the time, the borough and the town were on board. With that said, I don't think any of us up here, the borough, the town, understood the property impacts associated with that, right? Along the way, right, let me just clarify, along the way, we changed it to a two-way traffic structure. And maybe that's where the design change aspect is coming into play. We really only did that because of the emergency response concern with our traffic study, right, that level of service F. So we wanted to provide traffic fluidity through the area as we were replacing the structure. So with that said, that was decided February of this year. Our design team has moved vigorously through the design to come up with what you have now. So it's been about 5 months, less than 6 months we've turned this around. In addition to that, we went out to the public, the property owners that would potentially be impacted, to have conversation with them in advance of this meeting, which is not normal practice. We didn't want them finding out here, right? I don't think that would be appropriate. So we voiced our opinion, and honestly, it worked because look, we have everybody here. And that's the comment, that's the public. For us, we hate going to public info meetings, and we only have one person there. It happens frequently. So as painful it is to kind of go back and forth here, understand we are here to solicit public comment. Respectfully, bro, I think we've coordinated quite a bit. Just in the past 6 months, we haven't.
Totally changed the design.
Yeah. Sure.
That was a requirement of our agreement. We would be on the same footprint, and there would be two means of ingress.
Yep. So at that time, we did not know the property impacts in February, is what I'm trying to say. We knew them in June.
February, that was not.
Understood. But we didn't know them. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We did 5 months of design to get ahead, right? And all I'm trying to say is we've done our best to coordinate. We're here now. We are bringing this to the public. That's the point of this, right? So I'd like to... Correct. And that was mentioned. Yep, if it's a rehab.
If it's a rehab,
Yep.
that makes that.
Yes, sir.
Changes all these other things that are unacceptable.
But I do want to clarify, when we do a rehab, right, let's paint this picture, okay? So the substructure is the issue on this bridge, okay?
It's the bearing plates. All you need to do is fix the base plates of those piers. That's it.
So the substructure is from 1940s. It's a riveted steel substructure.
They're fixed all the time. Look at the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right. So understand, I'm just trying to clarify the process of the rehab, right? So yes, it can be fixed, okay? He is correct. With that said, you still require temporary support of the structure in order to do this. A riveted structure, you got to remove the rivets, add more steel plating. So the property impacts are still there, although they most likely will be temporary, they're still there. So the mindset is, as you start temporarily supporting the structure, right, you're there. Well, if you're temporarily supporting the structure, you might as well get rid of the old 1940 substructure in its entirety so you prevent further deterioration. As you're doing that, right, now the mindset is, okay, we're going to remove the substructure and we're going to replace it with concrete piers. That is challenging in itself, right, because now you're removing the substructure below a superstructure that you're trying to maintain. There's potential damage, right? So now there's concerns with that. Now if you're doing all of that work, you're kind of doing little surgical removals of things, you start thinking, okay, well, what would it cost us to replace the structure? What is the life cycle? Will it benefit us long-term to replace it now rather than later? Understand, if we do a rehab project now, that's fine. If we end up going there, we can fix it. We'll be fine. We'll be out of your hair. It'll still be painful, trust me, because construction, access, and everything. Long-term impacts, probably not as great. However, we'll be back here in 25 years. And that's the point we're trying to make. And if that is okay, then that's what we hear. I just want to explain the process, right? Do you want to come up, sir? And then I want to give you a chance too, so. Okay, sorry. I went off too, so. Here you go.
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Rogers. I'm a Burgess in the borough. I'll keep this very short. As a resident, elected official, and property owner in Stonington Borough, I strongly oppose the Connecticut Department of Transportation plan to demolish and rebuild the bridge over the Amtrak tracks, a project estimated to take more than 3 years. This work will severely disrupt daily lives of residents, shopkeepers, organizations like the Como, and the proposed 12-foot shift in the bridge alignment raises unnecessary and serious concerns over eminent domain for nearby homeowners and businesses. There is a practical alternative. Connecticut DOT and Amtrak should work together to reopen the North Water Street Railroad crossing closed years ago. This change could remove the need to shift the bridge, project property owners, and protect property owners and still achieve safety and infrastructure goals. The responsibility for this situation lies entirely with the Connecticut DOT and Amtrak. The lack of transparency, the failure to consider less harmful alternatives, and the disregard for community concerns are theirs alone. This is not the first time Connecticut DOT and Amtrak have advanced major projects with inadequate communication or community collaboration. Patterns that create, disrupt, and leave local leaders scrambling to respond to decisions already in motion. Local officials are not the cause of this problem. We are being forced to react to it. I urge Connecticut DOT and Amtrak to halt current plans, return to the table, and work directly with Stonington officials and residents to create a solution that improves infrastructure while respecting the integrity of our community. And I want to thank all of you for being here. Bravo.
We're going to open up the public house. You want to come up? It's been very patient, so thank you. We're going to be up here.
Hi, my name is Joe Burgess. I'm the co-owner of 203 North Main Street with my wife Alyssa Bass. That's where the DOT, as part of this project, wishes to acquire a temporary easement of 1,000 square feet. The easement would involve demolishing my 250 square foot garage that has a loft and a new roof, knocking down my fence, taking most of my small driveway and my gardens. We lived in our home since 1994 and in the shadow of the viaduct with no issues. We are now facing having construction equipment in these large cranes 9.5 feet from the corner of our family room for 3 years, making a home virtually unlivable. We would have no off-street parking and nowhere to store all our lawn furniture and bikes and all our other toys in our garage. We find it hard to believe that our tiny piece of yard is needed for a project when there's plenty of land surrounding the viaduct to use as a driveway and stage equipment. And when it's done, the viaduct will be 12 feet closer to our house, looming over our driveway and likely making it impossible to rebuild our garage. In 3 years, we had planned to retire and move to a warmer place. That has been our plan for many years. But this project, that won't happen. This won't happen with this project because we're not going to be able to sell our home. The project's just going to be started. And the impact is not just on us. By temporarily demolishing the Como thrift shop, the Como would lose a major source of revenue. Dodson's would lose winter boat storage, meaning a loss of income. The new owner of 201 North Main Street, which we all know is Zach's Restaurant, who's done an amazing amount of renovations there since he bought it, his building's going to be demolished too. He's going to lose all that. And if anyone here thinks the property owners will be able to negotiate with the DOT and get some kind of big payout, just look around the state. In the end, you get what they offer. Most recently, the DOT took properties in Norwich for a roundabout project, forcing a number of small businesses to move. In our case, the town has appraised my garage at just $2,000. I'm not sure why, I've never questioned it. My insurance company, though, says that it will pay us $87,000 to replace it if it burns down or gets destroyed by a hurricane. What number do you think they're going to pay me? That's not mentioning the cost to replace my driveway, my garden, and my fence. And there's going to be no money to compensate me for the loss of my property. There goes our retirement plans. We'll also have to hire an attorney to negotiate, engineer to assess the current condition of our 190-year-old stone basement, which could be damaged by whatever work they're going to be doing on it. I'm explaining all of this to you because so you realize these decisions impact people's lives. They're not just drawings on a piece of paper up here on their maps. I think we can all agree on one thing. We're here because no one has maintained this bridge after it was repaired in 1993. Now the DOT wants to spend $48 million of federal and state taxpayer money, that's ours, including an additional $1.2 million of your money that will have to be allocated in the town budget to replace the viaduct instead of repairing it at a much lower cost. With inflation and delays, that cost is likely to be closer to $50 or $60 million when it's done. And remember, the DOT's own consultant recommended a repair at first, not a replacement. The scope of this project only came to light on July 10th, when DOT sent us a letter about possibly taking our property. Town officials were not aware of the change until my wife brought the plans up to Danielle Chiefborough and showed them. The town had previously been assured any taking of land would be minor. And after all this money is spent on this bridge, what's going to happen? I've seen no discussion about how much money will be allocated to maintain the bridge or a maintenance schedule. That means we'll be back here in a few decades with the DOT saying the bridge needs to be replaced again. That's how we do things in Connecticut. I'm urging the DOT to reconsider its plan and instead repair the bridge and allocate money for yearly maintenance. From our discussions with DOT, which I have to say, they came to our house and talked to us. They did come down right away and spent about an hour looking at the property and talking to us. The driving force behind having to shift the bridge 12 feet to my house is the desire to maintain 2 lanes of traffic in each direction for construction. DOT says alternating one-way traffic pattern, which we see in other projects, is not viable because of backup traffic. I say waiting a few minutes in your car is worth preserving the neighbor's property. My only concern would be to make sure the fire department, the ambulance company, and the police could respond to emergencies. That's an easy solution. When emergency vehicles are dispatched, red light could stop traffic on both ends of the viaduct, and any cars on the viaduct would quickly clear before Chief Hobley's fire trucks drive over. Better yet, as we've heard before, the DOT should negotiate with Amtrak to restore the emergency at-grade crossing at North Water Street, so our firefighters, police officers, and EMTs have a secondary access if something happens to the viaduct during construction and after. It's crazy that today the borough can be cut off because there's no secondary access. Something I heard tonight, Amtrak said, DOT said, talk to Amtrak, they said no. Call Senator Blumenthal, call Senator Murphy, call Congressman Courtney. They hold the money, they give money to Amtrak. Talk to them, see if they can make it happen. As 31-year residents of this town, we want to thank First Selectman Danielle Chiefborough, her assistant Stacy Haskell, Deputy Police Chief Todd Olson, Borough Fire Chief Jeff Hobley, State Rep Andre Baumgartner, Borough Warden Michael Shepard, State Senator Heather Summers, and so many other town officials and residents for their assistance and support over the past few weeks. It shows what a great community we live in. And for the DOT, I think the message from the people here in Stonington are going to be clear to you tonight. Repair the bridge with the smallest impact on our residents.
All right, thank you. Maintenance, we were out there last year, June of '24. We put in some diaphragms and did some repairs. Prior to that, I don't know, I'd have to look at the logs, so that's the most recent. Okay, well, yeah, so, come on up. We'll go next, over there, thanks.
Hi. So I had so much that I was going to say, like a lot. And I'm not going to say most of it because I want to give everybody a chance to have their say. I will say this. My name is Alyssa Bass. I am the other owner of 203 North Main Street. We live there in a house built in 1835. We've been there since 1994. The state of Connecticut wants to borrow the back third of our 0.15 acre property to provide access to the construction staging area around the Alpha Avenue Viaduct project. They want to tear down my garage, they want to build the bridge over my backyard now, and they want us to live 6 feet from a dangerous and active construction site for 3 to who knows how many years. There's a lot to unpack about the DOT and the town and their lack of maintenance of this bridge in 31 years. So we have seen more activity in the last 6 months under that bridge than in the last 30 years combined. No one takes care of it. Let's applaud negligence. They want to build a new bridge and then never come back, right? So whoever is in these seats in 30 years will be seeing the same thing. They don't take care of it. There's no maintenance program. I would rather see a maintenance program than the destruction of the borough and our part of Stonington. So Joe thanked everybody that has helped us and stepped forward, and I'm so appreciative to see everybody here. So many people have reached out, total strangers have called me and texted me and come to my door to tell me, first of all, their own DOT eminent domain stories, and there's a million of them out there. And second of all, how really as a community we need to come together and make sure that we are heard. It's one thing to sit here and run a PowerPoint and get written comments. It's another thing to actually hear what people are telling you. So here's my message. Be truthful in what you say. Be frugal with our money. Be gentle to the neighbors and the property. Listen to the people. And most of all, be thoughtful in what you ultimately decide to do. It's not just lines on a piece of paper. It's our lives.
All right, so Francisco's going to be running the mic around. We have the gentleman here. It's going to be, so we either have the mic or you can come up. So we'll be next.
Here, hold this for a second.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
My name is Jesse Diggs. I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed in Connecticut for 45 years and in Virginia for 50 years. I've been following this project for over 3 years. I've done a fair amount of research on it, and here's my take on it. I'm going to work backwards from the easiest thing. The clearance, the vertical clearance under the bridge for vehicles is currently 13.4 inches, 13.6 inches. There has never been, that I'm aware of, a vehicle ever got stuck underneath that bridge. There are plenty of bridges in Connecticut that have, in New England, that have clearance issues. So that alone is not a reason to replace the bridge. All right, let's move on to the Amtrak issue. The wires underneath of that bridge, in fact, I looked at every bridge from Pawcatuck to Niantic. Every one of those bridges have the same problem with the wires are too low, too close to the girders. Why? Because those bridges were built during the era of diesel engines. So unless you plan on replacing every bridge from here probably to New York City, then that's really not a reason to do that. However, there is an easy solution. How do the wires get across a railroad bridge on a waterway? They use a conductor rail. This is a fixed rail that travels the whole length of the bridge. In the case of the Mystic River Bridge, it's a lifting bridge. In the case of Natick River Bridge, it's also a lift bridge. The wires from the electrical wires are connected to the conductor rail, and in this case, there would be a fixed rail underneath of the bridge. So you don't need to raise the bridge to get the clearance that's needed. And this could be done on every bridge. I have found no public records of DOT talking with Amtrak about that bridge. If they were concerned about it, they would let you know. So let's take that off the table. There's an easy way to solve the problem of the conductor rail underneath of the bridge. That's not the issue. Let's get to the elephant in the room. The bridge itself. Your words, yourself words, were poor maintenance. And what we just heard from other people is that maintenance is the issue. Let's look at bridges that have been around for a long time. Brooklyn Bridge, George Washington Bridge, you name it. They've been around hundreds of years, maybe not hundreds. And why are they still there? Because they're being maintained. So you're talking about putting in a new bridge. You haven't talked anything about a maintenance issue at all. I kind of diverted a little bit, but I think the answer is that bridge can be replaced. I'm sorry, the bridge can be repaired. Your engineers that looked at it 3 years ago came up with that conclusion. You just said it's not a structural issue. There's not a load limit that's been put on that bridge. So there's no reason in the world, why you cannot repair that bridge. Now, one of the things you showed us was the girders. You showed you're going to go from an 8-girder section to a 6-girder section. Most home builders will tell you that that's probably not a good idea to go with 2x12s on 48-inch centers as opposed to 2x10s on 24-inch centers. The closer your girders are, the stronger the bridge is going to be. You've got some design issues already. You also said you're 30% into design. 2 weeks ago, you said 15%. Your numbers keep moving around a little bit. Now, I respect the fact that you guys have done a lot of work on this. There's no question about it. But you need to understand that that's not necessarily the best solution. The best solution is to repair that bridge, maintain that bridge, and you can do that bridge very easily without disrupting everybody's lives, everybody's businesses for years and years. This is really not a good thing to do. You need to go back to the drawing board. You're here, you have the opportunity now to make some changes. Go back to the drawing board, recognize that the best thing to do with that bridge is to repair it, not to replace it.
This gentleman here has got his hand up. We do have some evidence of the bridge getting hit. Main Street specifically, there's several gouges on the bottom flanges. The vertical clearance Amtrak, it's a state statute requirement when we replace, very clear with that. So your comment is heard. As I mentioned, we can rehab this structure, and this is why we're here to solicit public comment. So go next here.
Hi, my name is Sandy Grubbs, and my comment is mostly personal. I live right next to the tracks. I've lived here for almost 80 years, and that railroad that went defunct was a good neighbor. Amtrak is not a good neighbor. They did a boondoggle project where they put electricity around, and electricity goes over the water, and everybody knows it doesn't mix. Amtrak always had the crossing down in Water Street was always open when I was growing up, and I realized the trains don't go as fast as they did, but I can tell you Amtrak is not a good neighbor. And I would hope that the DOT doesn't become the same kind of a neighbor like doing a new bridge. The people in this town would like to see that bridge fixed, and I hope, do any of you live in Stonington?
No, sir.
Okay, well, speaking from the people that I've seen here, I don't think anybody wants the new bridge. They want it fixed. That way it doesn't affect the thrift shop has been an institution in this town from the time I was born, when the Como was first made. And the Basses have lived here for a long time. Dodson's has been here forever. I slid down that hill when I was a kid. That's no longer going to be there. So if you're wise, you'll go back and at least try to talk to Amtrak. I know they don't want to talk to anybody, but please try to talk to them, and please fix our bridge. Don't make a new one and disrupt everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So just for clarity, even if we do a rehab, there's still going to be some disruption of the area. I just want to be clear with that. There's going to be construction activities, so don't assume if we go rehab, right, which we're taking your comments, and truthfully, we don't live here, and that's why we're here. I want to emphasize that every time I'm talking. We're here to solicit comment, and we will accommodate and adjust accordingly. We have to work through the chain of command. We'll work closely with the borough and the town. So, Francis, where are you next? So you asked me earlier, so you're up front, so here you go.
My name is John Sherest. I've been a resident for my entire life, not of the village per se, but just walking like the Stonington. So my question is, if you rehab the bridge, then the eminent domain goes out the window, you're not taking someone's property, is that correct?
Eminent domain.
All right. Do we know the impacts yet for the rehab options?
Even with a rehab option, the property under the bridge will be acquired by the state.
He's talking about the Dotson Boatyard, so to prevent storage underneath the structure. However, for clarity, Dotson Boatyard will still have access. They will have a right to access both properties on either side. And that's simply for the safety of the structure for flammable materials. There's plenty of cases where things have caught fire, and now the bridge is engulfed in flames. So. Yep, and they've coordinated with them before, so this is just to ensure that. So
the other question I had was for Chief Hoadley. I don't know where you are, Chief. Were you planning on staging? You were planning on staging an ambulance in the village? Is that correct? So if that were an option and the bridge failed, how do you get the ambulance to a hospital without opening North Water Street? We have an ambulance on both sides, but an ambulance is designed to take me, broken, to the hospital, and the bridge is now collapsed and the bridge is inaccessible. So North Water Street is a must. They must open North Water Street. Yeah, absolutely. And then I was just, from an engineering point of view, I was curious what kind of testing you guys did at the bridge. Did you do ultrasound of the rusted metal? There's many, many different ways, non-destructive testing that you can do of bridges of metal per se. I know you said you had water leaking and the panels would have to be removed, but I was curious from an engineering point of view, what exactly did you do? Did you look at it visually, or did you actually do testing on it? That's about it for me.
Thanks. To answer that, we do biennial inspections, right? So we go hands-on every 2 years. The last one was this past January, January of 2024. So the next one is coming up this January of 2026. So with that, people are hands-on up in those areas. This is a fracture critical structure with the steel caps on the substructure, because the substructure is steel. So they Nope. To my knowledge, we have not done any NDT testing. specifically because it's visual inspection and measurement of the section loss. And with that, we take that back into the office and we model the bridge in our programming to see what loads it can carry and the efficiency of that. So as far as NDT, I'm trying to think of things that would help us out in that sense. Really, we're focusing on DT when there's a crack in the steel. We try to see how long it's protruded and the size of it, that to that nature. So to answer your question, is no. Yeah, so
Yeah, as part of an inspection, they do measure areas with section loss where it's rusted, and that gets factored into the load rating. It's about every 10 years, works out to be. They go back and they recompute what the load capacity is on the bridge based on all the measurements of all the section loss. It's a huge process because you have to measure every single component on the bridge where there's section loss, but yeah, they do take that into account. And for steel, most of the loss is visible, so you can measure it. You would only do like ultrasound or eddy current or something like that if there was a hidden defect that you were trying to investigate.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, I just had a couple of, one question and a comment. Donna Brewer, by the way. It sounds to me like the reason you're moving the bridge to 12 feet is to ensure two-way access during the project. So if you want to make a long-term change that permanently affects people's lives to solve a temporary problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then the second thought I had is, I'm kind of amazed that we don't have a law in Connecticut that would require, when you have a community that is as populated as the village area, that we are not required to have a second way of exiting in the event of an emergency. I mean, you have an apartment buildings have to have more than one access. Why wouldn't a village the size of the borough be required to have that as well? I mean, that's something I would think that Amtrak should think about. Yeah, and we certainly have a number of others. I think somebody else mentioned this, that there's several other places where there's grade level crossovers. And you look at a town even the size of Mystic, they have a crossover with a light. You know, I don't understand the logic of why Amtrak will not agree to that.
So, as Stan mentioned, this is an orphan bridge, right? This is a municipal road over a railroad that the state does not own. The previous railroad company went bankrupt and the state took on some of that liability. As far as multiple access to the borough, it's a municipal roadway connection there that is missing. The Water Street is potentially one of them, right, that you guys are talking about. Amtrak, I tell you, I'm just from my personal experience, and everybody up here would acknowledge, they will always say no, and it's strictly due to liability. If they were to reopen it and something were to happen, a train hits a car, someone passes away, that's it, right? No one wants that. With that said, we understand the concern, and we'll take it back. I'm trying to say it's very unlikely, but we'll take it back and maybe in a temporary condition, I don't know, move it up the chain. So I'm just reassuring you now, the comment is heard. I think it's been a reoccurring comment. We'll bring it back. We'll work with the borough and the town and coordinate with them, with Amtrak, and we'll see where we can go. Say that again. Okay.
When's the governor putting Amtrak and saying, open it up, it's public safety?
Sure. Thanks.
Oh, okay, can you read? Yeah, my name is Todd Williams. I live on Elm Street in the borough, and I will say that all the comments I've heard tonight, I basically am in agreement with. But what I want to do is bring up something that was little more than 2 sentences in anything you've said, and that is the potential modification of the footbridge across the railroad on Elm Street to make that, ADA compliant or whatever. Has anybody really looked into doing any engineering on that? Okay.
Well, conceptually.
Yeah.
Yes, and to make it ADA compliant, it's huge. Now,
Yeah.
right.
Understood. I'm an engineer that's worked in the construction industry for 40 years, so I'm familiar with codes, I'm familiar with everything. And I did some rough numbers, and on the peninsula side of the track, you would need approximately 336 feet of ramp and platform space. How do you propose to do that amount of space, that amount of ramp, and not make it completely ungainly?
Again, that's an option. We are conceptual right now. We have to maintain pedestrian traffic. So that is something we're exploring. I don't have the answer. We haven't carried that design through. The other option is a temporary pedestrian. Now, with that said, that's with our current replacement option, right? So,
Right, this is why I'm responding to what has been here and what has been out in the public, which has essentially been about 2 sentences. But that, to build something like that in that neighborhood and the space that's allowed there, which is used for resident parking because there are very few houses on that street that really have enough off-street parking to accommodate what the residents require. So that area is a prime parking space, and to lose that would be a major problem for the Elm Street neighborhood right around the footbridge.
Okay. Your comments noted. Thank you.
So now we're going to spend $42 million at today's money. When we start this job in 2 more years with the inflation from tariff or whatever, it's probably going to be more like 60. And when you start to look at what that deferred maintenance costs were, it's astounding that no maintenance has been made on that bridge. A little paint would have gone a long, long way. And so when you look at the Department of Traffic's work on all the highway bridges crossing 95, it's always the base plates on either end of the bearing piers that are always rusted and corroded, and they don't take those bridges down, they replace the base plates. Why can't we do that here?
Thank you. So as I mentioned, the structure can be rehabbed, right? So we're taking that comment. Thank you. Go ahead.
Y'all are doing a good job coming out tonight. You should be proud of yourselves. Now, when this gentleman says he has absolutely no juice with Amtrak, I believe him. Amtrak does not have to listen to a single word DOT says, but Amtrak needs money. And Amtrak has to listen to our federally elected officials. So I'm going to suggest to all of you, we know who our federal elected officials are. We know who our senators are and our representatives. We need to make their lives miserable, okay? They are our public service. If you think about it, we're their boss. They come to us wanting to be elected, so it's time to be their boss and say, hey, talk to Amtrak. This is not a big deal opening one grade crossing temporarily, not forever. We can do this. So you're gonna call her right? Yeah. All right.
Hi, my name is Steve Mueller. My family lived in the borough for 125 years. Matter of fact, we lived at 203 North Main Street. My father owned that house from 1950 to 1978. I grew up in the backyard playing under that bridge. And I think what I can add to this conversation is maybe some history of that bridge. When that bridge was built, I believe there were 7 options to get people into the borough without going over the tracks. And this is all coming from a talk at the Historical Society I attended 5 years ago. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. But the viaduct was far and away the most expensive way to get down into the village, like tenfold. But Franklin Roosevelt came along, the New Deal came along, and $2 million came from the federal government, so they built it because, this is the key, it was the only option where they did not have to invoke eminent domain. So they spent the federal government's money and said, we're doing that. Now, things are falling apart, maybe, that, no pun intended, since then, but I think we could learn from history and maybe do what's right for the people. And by the way, this time it's cheaper. So I don't think there's really even an issue. Anybody with me? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Lisa Kanicki. I'm president of the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce, and so first I'm speaking in that capacity. We have a major project in the borough called the Stonington Lobster Trap Tree, and lots of small businesses that are here tonight that we work really hard to support year-round. To those businesses, I met with a couple of them today. One said they're thinking about signing a lease in another community to avoid this project. I hear your fear. It is real. These are some serious concerns, and all I can say is from our perspective, no matter which direction this goes, we will triple our efforts to support you in any way that we can, like we did during COVID and any other crisis that's come along, the floods in Westerly, Superstorm Sandy. I promise you, we will be there for you. Now, having said that, during COVID, there was a phrase that was floated around when it was referencing businesses, and it was essential. The government came in with all its wisdom and said, you can only stay open if you were essential. And I remember standing at press conferences and literally fighting back tears, and also simultaneously being filled with resentment at that phrase, essential. Because if you own the business, no matter what kind of business it is, it's essential to you and to your family and to paying your mortgage and to providing college for your children and everything else. So I did hear a phrase earlier tonight, well, the takings will be minor. Minor to who? Because these takings are major to those people who are affected by it, and to our community center that all of us want to support, because they've supported us through recreational programs and education and a variety of other things. So words matter, and it isn't minor. If it was happening to any one of you, you would understand that. So I would ask, as a resident, not as the chamber president, to please keep that in mind, that these people in this room care about those one or two properties. And I think you might have grossly underestimated our capacity for compassion and caring for our neighbors in the town of Stonington, because that's who we are. I'm a mom with 3 kids. They like Dr. Seuss. I know it's not cool to like Dr. Seuss anymore, but there was a famous line, a person's a person, no matter how small. A property is a property, no matter how small. That's how we feel here in this town of Stonington, and I hope that no one will forget that. And I would just like to say, remember the Hippocratic Oath. This obviously, there's some surgery that needs to be done, there's some work that needs to be done, but first, do no harm. Don't make it worse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Pete Malvacy. I live in the borough at 11 Bradley Street. I have a few issues. I fit into a couple of categories, right? I'm a walker, I'm a biker, and I'm also a senior citizen. I'm actually 73. And I use the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, as well as the overpass several times a day, usually as a walker, sometimes as a biker. It's hard to get up that bridge as a walker. It's very hard to get up as a biker. You make that bridge any higher, it's going to be extremely hard for people who are less fit than I might be. And I see it now with people taking their children in strollers going up that bridge because they can't climb the 35 steps on the pedestrian overpass. So they go to the overpass itself, and they're having strollers, and they're struggling to get their kids up. And some of them have tandem strollers on top of that, and they need another person with them to push it up. So you're saying that it's supposed to be accommodative to walkers, to bikers. As your report indicated, a lot of people over 65 in that area, me included. But I think that raising that bridge makes that very, very difficult. On top of that, as a biker, the slope becomes more like a ski slope at that point. It's already a very fast hill, and it goes into two blind intersections. The police have concerns about the one on the west side. And making that a faster hill is going to create even more danger. Now, I have one other thing on the wires. I noticed that Amtrak, that arcing section that you show in your presentation, is not from intermittent arcing. That's from that cable coming into contact or very close contact with the bridge, which happens because of the vertical conductor on the Amtrak train. That happens every now and then. They themselves have fixed that on the pedestrian bridge. If you go look, on either side of the pedestrian bridge, they put a horizontal beam at the same height, by the way, as the overpass and the pedestrian overpass. They put a horizontal beam where they have arms that keep the wire down so that the upper conductor of the train doesn't push against it and cause arcing to the bridge as it did on the overpass. It's interesting that Amtrak didn't choose to do anything about it, right? They saw the arcing, it definitely closed the circuit down when it happened, but never bothered them enough to do any kind of maintenance on that. And they can easily maintain that by putting an insulating device up there as well. Now, one last point, and this one really bothered me, and it's been bothering me for 3 years. Some of my neighbors know I've been harping about it for quite a while. And I saw it in your presentation under, we need the bridge because of the problem with the structure and the maintenance, and other causes and other requirements. And there it comes tonight. The other causes are the expansion of the Connecticut rail system, right, which has been talked about for 3 or 4 years. I live along the railroad line. I've been asking about that with state officials forever, and I get complete cricket response. It's always, oh, we don't know anything about it. But now it seems like it's no coincidence that the state would look to spend $50 million plus to serve 800 residents when they can repair a bridge, but they'd rather spend $60 million. And I just wonder how much of that is really because you want to put a new train station in Stonington, and you want to expand the, and I'm not going to drop this because it's been, I come from New Jersey, right? So I'm kind of used to this kind of stuff. And I was an elected official there as well, so I know how it works either way. The fact is, there's been nothing but obfuscation from state officials about their plans for the expansion of the Connecticut rail system. And we just heard recently something about it in the Economic Development Commission saying one of the justifications is to allow commuters from Westerly to get to EB and Noank. I have a hard time believing that's a great justification for a rail line. In any case, I just wanted to mention that I have personal suspicion that a good deal of the reason to spend tens of millions of dollars when you could spend a lot less might be because of that rail line. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this project is not connected to that. I can reassure you because I didn't even know about it. Yeah, I don't think that was what it was implied.
It's because we're aware of the rail study. So if we're going to invest that amount of money, we want to provide for whatever possible future uses are going to be in the area. So if we know that there may be a potential for a station, we just are planning around that.
With that said, that's not the driving factor of the project, right? We're in a poor condition structure, and that's why we're here. So go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Farrah Garland. I'm a Stonington resident. I have a lot to say, but fortunately, everybody else has said a lot of it for me already. I have two main things I'd like to touch on. I'm going to be as brief as possible. The first is, I think everyone here, I think myself for sure, really wants to make sure that our bridge is like safe and taken care of. I think we're all just really concerned about the scope of that and taking care of our neighbors. With that said, as soon as you start talking about eminent domain, everybody gets real touchy real fast, and rightly so. We've all seen what has happened in New London and surrounding towns, and I think we're all going to go down fighting on that one, and or at least I certainly am. So I think that's something we're all willing to take care of our neighbors on. We're not gonna just sit back and let our neighbors lose their homes so that a bridge can be fixed more conveniently for the state. But what I really want to talk about is something that a couple people have touched on briefly, which is the access to the footbridge. As some can see and some cannot, I'm a wheelchair user over here, hello. Trying to get into the borough or even get around the borough is impossible as it is. The footbridge is about 25 feet high, if I'm correct, and if I read all of the slides and documents before this meeting correctly, and as the gentleman commented on earlier, the plan is to put in big old ADA compliant ramps up to this footbridge, and there will be no pedestrian access on the viaduct during the project. If that is correct, either these ramps are going to be massive and take up most of the borough, or like a lot of DOT projects I've encountered with ADA compliant ramps, they're not going to be. They're not actually going to be accessible. They're going to be slapped together, and they're going to be dangerous. I have scars on my body from using ADA compliant DOT temporary ramps for projects, and that is a big concern. I'm not the only wheelchair user in Stonington, and Stonington residents are not the only people to come in and out of the village. We're not and chair users aren't the only people who are going to be using ramps. My concern is making sure that whatever ends up happening with this bridge, which, again, let's make sure we take good care of our neighbors, that access is truly, fully taken into consideration for all folks. And that means talking to actual disabled folk and including them in the process of putting these ramps in and this access in. Because yeah, the ramps are going to take up a lot of space in the borough. That's going to be really, really difficult. But we can't just not have access. So we need to find a good middle ground. And yeah, if it doesn't work well, you will never stop hearing from me. There's a lot of people here who can definitely confirm that. Anyway, thank you.
Appreciate that. If you can get your name and contact info in some fashion, maybe someone from my group can get it. All right, thanks. And we do have an ADA group, and we'll make sure to reach out, so that's right. Thanks. All right. We have a hand in the back. Francisco, do you want to? Can you raise your hand again, miss? Yeah.
Hi,
He's going to come with a mic, because otherwise the TV can't hear you, so sorry about that.
how have future events such as flooding been factored into your design? And I'm wondering this because you're factoring in a station where you replace the bridge, right? How can you factor in a train station in an area that floods? And also, is that train station going to be considered if you're just rehabbing the bridge? Thank you.
Yep, so the train station is not part of this project, just for clarity. I don't even know the details about it. My team probably know a little bit. There's a study that's in place. That's not the goal of this project. We have a core condition structure, and that's what we're trying to handle. What was the other question? Sorry, Flooding, that's right. So the town engineer has mentioned that, has expressed concern from the beginning. The intersection at Cutler In Alpha Ave specifically, there is going to be, in this proposed condition, a raise to accommodate higher elevation to ensure better travel if there is flooding in that area. That whole area is a flood area, right? Everybody knows that. So the raise of that intersection will help emergency egress should there be flooding there. So it is being considered, still being worked out. It is a consideration. In a rehab alternate, that wouldn't change, right? We would essentially not be touching the approaches. We would be touching the structure itself, and everything else would stay. Good. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were on.
I'm Ann Scheibner. I think this has been a really excellent discussion. I'm glad to be back in my hometown where such a discussion can take place. But the longer term, maybe the longer term elephant in the room really is about the maintenance issue. And I don't think you can address that. I'm not sure who can, but I've been hearing about that for a long time, right? So I think we have to find a way to raise that wherever the appropriate Orphan Protection Society can be raised up. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yep, so resources are a key aspect to our maintenance program within the state. We are spread thin. It's more, transparently, it's more reactive than proactive. And that's just due to the deterioration and the number of bridges that we handle. But point well taken, we've heard that comment. Again, we were out there last May, June, and that was a reactive. We saw some issues. We went out there and did some repairs. Other than that, I can't speak to the log, so we'll consider that. Thank you.
Hi, Alden and Alexander. I live just outside the borough, and I really thank you all for being here to listen and to hear our community. You can tell we're very tight-knit. We care about each other a lot. I just had a question to see if there's anyone in the room. I personally agree with repairing the bridge and opening Water Street, but is there anyone in the room that is pro the new bridge? And if so, I'd be willing to hear why. And also maybe demonstrate to the DOT that nobody in here wants it.
Hi, my name is John Kendall. I'm also an engineer, and so I have a comment. I have a question and a comment. My first question is kind of a nerdy question, and it relates to the figure that you gave about the wait time being in grade F because the average wait time would be 5 minutes on the lights. So what I really wonder is, what's the median wait time and what does the distribution look like? Because it's not the same every time. And so, you know, I think you would give us a lot more information if you could give that statistic in future.
Yeah, we can definitely provide that. I think with coordination, look, we hear the comment, right? I think everyone wants the rehab to happen. So that is a decision above me, right? It's even above my assistant chief engineer who's here now. So there's been a lot of discussions had. We're going to work with the town and the borough. If we go that route, if it is a replacement where we are using alternating one way, right, which is your point, is what you're trying to say, we will go through the study and dive into that traffic, make sure that's transparent with the borough and the town, and go through that. More explanation to the town. If we go that route, you know, we'll make sure it's very clear.
Sure, and that leads me to my comment. My comment is when I originally saw this meeting and how the project had evolved, my thought was, well, if I have to sit, and I live in the borough, if I have to sit for 2 or 3 minutes every time I come and go, and it's going to save all this destruction of all this property, then that's a no-brainer for me. No problem at all.
Hi there. My name is Paul Collette. I live in the borough too. And I agree pretty much with everybody here. And I really believe strongly that a repair option is good. The first spokesman tonight talked about lack of transparency. And I'm concerned about what's going to happen next. And I start with what I already haven't seen. Option 1 was $17,000. You show a 50-year cost of like $166,000, and option 1A I think was $222,000, something like that. I wonder where those numbers came from. Those are phenomenal, and it can't be maintenance, because we know that you don't do maintenance. So is it a rebuild in 25 years? Well, it sounds like we're going to have one of those anyway. So fundamentally, that's not my question. That's just a comment. My question is, what happens next after tonight? You got some great feedback. Are you going to go away and come back and meet again with new options, with more details? For instance, the ramp questions are phenomenal. I live between the viaduct and the footbridge. I'll be affected by that. We all will be, some much more than others. We need answers to those kind of things, but if you're going to leave and come back later with any option, whether it's the repair option or stay the course, rebuild the thing and say, we can't do anything about Amtrak, that's not our job. We'll need to know that, and I'm afraid we're going to hear nothing until the trucks roll into town. So my question is, what will we hear, when, and through who?
It really is unfortunate that the lack of transparency has been kind of a common tone of the comments. I want to say that's potentially reared in probably the last 5 months where our design has really progressed, and quite frankly, we do not normally go into potential right-of-way impacts this early in design. They typically happen a little bit later. We were trying to get ahead of that. So I think it's a product of us trying to get ahead, trying to be transparent, working out with the property owners. There was probably a lapse of communication in between when we initially were working with the town and borough up to now, but truly that is just because we started doing this design within the last 5 months. So to reassure you, we will come back in some fashion, most likely virtual. I think we worked with the town and borough over that. I already kind of see where this is going. We're going to work it up the chain. We'll be in contact with the borough and the town and communicate through them. While also coming back to the public and reporting where we're going. So you will not see trucks out there unless you are aware of what they're going to be doing. So just reassuring you of that. Just stay tuned. As far as timeline goes, I don't know that answer. So we'll work through that. Okay.
Am I next? Hi, my name is David Maxon. I'm a resident of Stonington, and I guess I just have to establish my connection to the borough. My family has a history there that goes back into the 1800s, so even though I don't live there, it's an important place to me. You heard a lot of heartfelt commentary about the impacts on the neighbors, the abutters, and it's rightfully so. I think it's important to recognize, however, those are the visible ones. Those are the ones that are obvious. And I think you could go a little deeper into your analysis of the one-way versus the two-way traffic question and look at the economic impact on the borough if this were to last for 3 years. How many jobs will be lost? How many businesses will go out of business or move out of the borough because of the reduced traffic? I don't know if it's going to be significant or not, but it sounds like a 35-second wait time between green lights at opposite ends could be significant, especially during the busy seasons. And I think if you could put some more numbers on that as well, that would give everyone a way to quantify not only the impacts on the neighbors, which are significant, but also the impacts on the community's economy. Thank you.
Over here.
Thank you. I'm Leslie Driscoll. I have a business on Water Street in the borough, and I'm also an incoming co-chair of the Stonington Borough Merchants Association. So I echo what Lisa Kanicki was saying from the chamber. We do have a very active merchants group down in the borough, and we meet each month. So I'll be talking to members next week at our monthly meeting for October. I'm also on the Architectural Design Review Board for the town of Stonington. So I would encourage the designers and architects of any changes you make to this bridge to come before our board by December if you're making decisions of how you're going to change the bridge. Please come before our board. It's an advisory board, but we do have a lot of real good talent on the board, a lot of architects and designers who know the town well, and we advocate for the town because the responsibility you have as architects is vast. You're putting something on the landscape that is going to be there for the rest of our lives, and we have to look at it every day and drive over it every day. So that's my comment. So I agree that you should repair the bridge, not rebuild it. Don't change the footprint, and let's come up with a viable maintenance schedule so we don't have to be in this place again soon. Thank you.
Well, on behalf, I'm not seeing any hands, so on behalf of Connecticut DOT, I really appreciate you coming out. It was mentioned I don't live here, we don't live here, and we rely on people who do to let us know what's going on. So rest assured, we're going back, we're going to talk to the team, and we're going to go from there. We'll report back through the town and the borough, and then in addition, we'll come back to the public. So thank you all for coming out, really appreciate it.